I wasn't hired to fit in. I was hired to fix what they refused to name. A brown girl in a glass building full of reflections that weren't mine. They called me refreshing. But I knew what they meant, disposable. My name is Anya Kapoor. Age 33. I've mediated labor strikes in Baltimore. I've untangled workplace harassment cases in conservative bank chains. I've held space for grieving parents and toxic executives alike. But nothing, not even those years in trauma-informed HR response, prepared me for Thornlink. IT was a Seattle-based AI startup with 6 founders, all white, all male, all wearing Allbirds and silent smiles. Their website gleamed with faux progressivism, a rainbow-coded About Us page, stock photos of diverse faces who didn't exist, and a DEI mission that read like it was written by ChatGPT on corporate mode. They brought me in after a minor PR incident. A junior dev posted on LinkedIn, "When I asked for parental leave flexibility, I was told, your wife's the mom, right?" The post went viral. The CEO called it a miscommunication. The CFO called it a hit job. I called it what it was, a systemic rot masked by kombucha taps and unlimited PTO. My first day, I wore navy slacks, flat shoes, and a quiet smile. The receptionist didn't look up. The badge printer was out of paper. The COO introduced me as Anita during the town hall. I corrected him. Twice. Still, I spoke calmly at the onboarding meeting. We're here to build a culture that doesn't just check boxes, but opens doors. They clapped. But I saw it in their eyes. I was an apology in lipstick. My office was a converted storage nook beside the server room. No windows, just buzz. The air smelled like ambition and burnt dust. There were post-its on the walls left by the last HR person. She lasted 3 months. Her final note still clung to the filing cabinet. Trust no one who says we're like a family. I took a picture of it before tossing it. The first week, I interviewed 22 employees. Not for gossip, for patterns. A black engineer who hadn't been promoted in 4 years. A trans woman misgendered during sprint calls. An intern whose buddy invited her to a leadership retreat, with no one else from her team. A single father written up for leaving at 5:01 p.m. None of it was in the official reports. When I shared a summary in my weekly culture brief, I added no names, just metrics, themes, actionable next steps. 2 hours later, the CTO messaged me on Slack, "Hey, maybe keep this tone a little less intense?" 3 minutes after that, the CEO DM'd, "Just curious, who gave you these stories?" They were smiling when they asked. Smiling like a butcher before the cut, the office had a gratitude gong. Employees were encouraged to ring it whenever someone did something good. One afternoon, I rang it for the janitor who stayed late to mop up someone's spilled oat milk. The entire sales team laughed from their glass cubicles. Later, someone taped a sign to the gong, "No HR performativity please," smiley face. I left it up. Sometimes, silence reveals more than shouting. During week 3, I was invited to an exec meeting. They were rebranding the culture. They wanted something bolder, but still safe. I suggested opening a quarterly anonymous climate survey, true insight without fear. The room fell silent. Then the co-founder, Jake, chuckled, "Yeah, but like, what if people just use it to vent? Or worse, make things up?" Laughter. All 6 of them. Like boys at a campfire throwing paper into flames, I wrote nothing in my notebook. But I remembered everything. That night, I stayed back late. Walked through the empty open floor plan, rows of ergonomic chairs and unused empathy posters. In the break room, the TV looped a promotional video, Thornlink, building a smarter world through ethical tech. I watched my reflection in the screen, pixelated, blurred, but still standing. I whispered to myself, they want a fixer. But what they've hired is a witness. And someday soon, that witness would speak, they said, help us tell better stories. But they never wanted truth, only tone. What they feared most wasn't a scandal. It was a mirror. It started with a whisper in the Slack channels, a vague note from the CEO, "We're going through some structural realignment. Exciting times ahead." I knew the language. Corporate omens always arrive dressed as opportunities. Still, I kept moving. I was building something real: monthly check-ins, policy redrafts, the beginnings of a culture guide rooted in dignity, not damage control. Then came the Thursday morning ambush. I had just poured my coffee, ceramic mug from home, navy blue, chipped lip. When Amanda from legal stopped by, she didn't knock, she stood in the doorway, arms folded, avoiding eye contact. "Hey, they're asking for you in the exec conference room. Now." I didn't ask why. I already knew. I walked past the motivational posters. Past the locked glass offices with CEOs pretending to be on calls. Past the gratitude gong, silent today. I counted each step. 15 from my desk to the glass door. One long inhale. And in I went. They were already seated: Jake, Mark, Dev, and 2 others who only spoke in brand slogans. There was a folder on the table. No welcome, no coffee, no pretense. Jake smiled like a knife. "Hey Anya. So, we've been talking." I sat down. Quietly. Crossed my hands in my lap. "It's just the tone of your reports. The culture brief. It's been kind of triggering for people." Triggering, that word hung in the air like cheap perfume. I let it linger. Mark jumped in, softer tone, feigned compassion. "We love the work you're doing. But it's making some people feel targeted." I tilted my head. "Because I listed anonymized statistics?" Jake shrugged. "It's not the facts, it's the framing. You're creating division." I said nothing, because that's what they want when they corner you, to make you fill the silence with apologies. So I stared back, then Dev pulled out the folder. "We're restructuring your role. Effective immediately, we're transferring culture management to marketing." I blinked. To marketing, not operations. Not people strategy. Marketing. You'll be moved under external relations. You'll still have a title, just a new focus. I opened the folder. A new job description. Brand integrity liaison. No authority. No reports. No budget. Just a PR puppet. I looked at Jake. "So this is the realignment?" His smile didn't move. "Think of it as freeing you up for storytelling. Which you're clearly passionate about." They had taken my work, my findings, my metrics, and shoved them into a marketing funnel. They didn't refute what I'd found. They buried it. Then made me their burial tool. I looked down at the chipped lip of my mug. Something cracked inside me. Quietly. Like bone under ice, I spoke softly. "So just to be clear, you're removing my ability to impact internal culture because the culture doesn't like being looked at?" Jake chuckled. "You're making this personal. It's just a better fit." I stood up, and in that moment, I felt my body do something strange. It did nothing. No shaking hands. No tears. No slammed doors, just stillness. "Thank you," I said. "This clarifies everything." That evening, I walked home under the slow Seattle drizzle. Didn't take the Uber credit. Didn't call anyone. I stopped at the same cafe I always passed but never entered. Sat in the back. Ordered nothing, just stared out the fogged-up window at a world that kept spinning, indifferent, and I whispered, "You moved me into silence." But silence has memory. And I write everything down. The next morning, I returned to my desk. My real desk. Not the one they tried to assign me. I opened a blank document. Title, Chronology of Internal Concerns, a Timeline. I wrote. Hour by hour. email by email, Slack threads, one-liners, dates, reactions, retaliations not for vengeance, but for record-keeping. I copied the company values from the website, pasted them on page 1, then I wrote underneath, "This is what it looked like when those words met real people." At noon, I received a team-wide email. "Please welcome our new culture marketing partner, Anya Kapoor." They added a smiling selfie from the last all-hands. I wasn't smiling in the photo, but they posted it anyway. The caption read, "We're proud to keep growing together." My jaw tightened. I looked up from the screen and saw Amanda from legal watching me from across the room. She looked away that night. I opened my private cloud folder. Inside, transcribed interviews, screenshots of voice memos from one-on-ones, drafts of policies they rejected, meeting invites where the subject lines changed after I left, receipts, and something else too, a draft letter addressed to the board of directors. Subject: formal concerns regarding systemic cultural failures at Thornlink. I hadn't sent it. Not yet. I wanted them to forget me first. I made one final change before shutting down my laptop. I changed my Slack status to active, but no longer participating. Let them think they'd won. Let them drink from the silence. Let them keep my smile on their posts. Let them market my voice while I curated my truth, because they didn't demote me. They unleashed me, and they didn't even hear it coming. Some women cry. Some scream. I write. Not to remember, but to build the ground beneath my silence. I showed up every day, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted them to forget I was watching. They moved me to the second floor, near the micro kitchen. No door. No privacy. No purpose. Just a recycled space next to the brand interns who wore pastel hoodies and filmed TikToks about culture vibes. Jake passed me in the hallway 3 times that week. Never made eye contact. IT was working. I made myself small. I asked no questions. Attended meetings with my camera off. Spoke only when asked, and even then, offered soft nods and neutral suggestions. Became what they wanted, a shell, but inside, the record grew. Every changed subject line. Every unsent message from team members who ghosted me after I lost authority. Every compliance question redirected to marketing. Every request I made that now needed approval. The silence wasn't empty. It was evidence. At night, I became my own historian. I stopped journaling in Word. I switched to pen and paper. Legal pads filled with names, timestamps, exact language. Just keep it light, Anya. Maybe next quarter we can revisit that. It's not that bad, is it? 1 page per sentence. I dated each. Filed them by emotional temperature. They thought silence meant surrender. They never imagined it meant strategy. My mother called. "Are you okay? You sound faded." I told her I was tired. She knew better. "You don't disappear, Anya. You observe. That's different. But don't let them erase you just because they're afraid to see you." I closed my eyes, let her words settle like warm stones in a cold body. "And when you do speak again," she said, "make sure it's somewhere they can't talk over you." There was a mirror in the restroom on the second floor. Tall, curved at the corners. The kind that made you question your posture, your face, your presence. One afternoon, I stared at myself in that mirror for 6 full minutes. My blazer looked too stiff. My earrings too bright. My eyes too alert for someone reassigned. I whispered aloud, "They took my title. But not my witness. And not my name." A janitor walked in behind me and paused. She smiled. "You good?" I nodded. "Not yet. But I will be." They assigned me to write blog posts about office resilience. I wrote them beautifully, used vague metaphors. Stories about sunflowers growing through concrete. Nothing about who planted the concrete. Marketing applauded. Jake commented a clapping emoji on one of them. Love this energy. So proud of your growth. That word, the growth, made me want to laugh. But laughter is loud. And I was still collecting data, then one night, while exporting files from the shared HR drive, I noticed a folder. Hidden in plain sight. Title, Legacy Culture Notes, Internal Use Only. Inside were reports from my predecessor, meeting transcripts. HR complaints that were never escalated. Summaries of culture risks, every single one redlined, rejected. Point one entry stopped me cold. This culture does not need healing. It needs witnessing. But the witnesses don't last long. She had written the same thing I felt, and now, her file was marked, voluntary departure. Poor fit for company vision. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then I copied the entire folder to my drive. Legacy. I would not disappear like her. The next day, someone replaced the quote on the whiteboard near the kitchen. It used to read, move fast and fix things. Now it said, vibe higher. I looked at the marker. Uncapped it. And underneath, I wrote, some things rot in silence. I didn't sign it. But I knew Amanda from legal would recognize my handwriting. Let her wonder. I started walking during lunch, same route. Down to the water, across the bridge, back past the food trucks. Point one day I saw a man playing cello near the dock. He played slow, mournful notes. Not for tips, just for sound. I stood still and listened for 11 minutes. Didn't record. Didn't post. I just needed to feel something real. When I returned to the office that afternoon, I passed the conference room where I was demoted. The door was cracked open. Jake stood at the whiteboard, coaching a new junior hire on how to set culture KPIs. He used my phrasing, my metrics, my entire slide deck template. The girl nodded along like he was brilliant. I kept walking, because you can steal a framework, but not a witness. That night, I lit a candle, scrolled to the bottom of my draft letter to the board, and added one more line. I was not a poor fit. I was a mirror. And you looked away. Then I pressed save. Not send. Not yet. Let the silence stretch a little longer. So when the sound returns, it breaks. Everyone expected me to disappear quietly. Most did, not because they were right, but because I let them believe they were. I stopped attending the 9:30 a.m. cultural wellness stand-ups. Not out of protest, but because I had started using that time more efficiently. While they burned hours in echo chambers of irony, I walked the blocks around South Lake Union, watching the fog lift off glass buildings. It was like watching blindfolds come off steel. Point one morning, I passed a mirrored cafe front and saw my reflection, not just tired, but tired of shrinking. That's when I stopped not walking. Shrinking, I started documenting everything. Quietly. Precisely. Emails, Slack threads, notes from meetings, all categorized under themes. Gaslighting. Tokenism. Blame transference. DEI performativity. Misuse of emotional safety as a silencing tool. The irony was, they had hired me to fix their culture, and I was finally doing it. Just not the way they expected. I reached out to the only other woman of color in leadership, the CTO's chief of staff. I didn't name names. I just said, when everything looks progressive but feels rotten, what do you do? She looked at me, not startled, just seen. You start naming the rot. Quietly. And you protect your hands while holding the mirror. We met twice a week at a small faux place tucked between warehouses. She told me about the VP of engineering who mocked a Muslim intern's prayer schedule. About the performance reviews rewritten post-signature. About the investor who said DEI's a burn rate disease. We weren't gossiping. We were building a map. 3 weeks later, I filed a protected complaint, not internally, but through an external ethics firm tied to one of the company's biggest investors. I knew the clause buried on page 17 of the Series B term sheet. Any unresolved claims of systemic cultural harm reported through a third-party whistleblower mechanism shall trigger mandatory audit and provisional freeze of expansion funds. They hadn't read their own fine print. I had. They still smiled at me in the hallway. The CEO, pale from PR prep, asked if I wanted to co-author a culture-forward blog post for Women's Month. I said I'd get back to him. Instead, I wrote my own, anonymous, clinical, titled When Culture is Cosmetic. Published it on Medium. Shared it through an anonymous tip to Blind. Then went silent, let the algorithms do the work. I still remember the day things shifted tangibly. It was a Tuesday. Someone removed the Friday Donut Talk invite from my calendar. It had been there for months, symbolic, if pointless. An hour later, I got an invite from legal, subject line, document request regarding internal culture concerns. No signature. Just a clock ticking. A viral one-liner found its way into the office Slack within hours. No one admitted to writing it, but I knew it came from someone who had read my article. The culture isn't toxic, it's just allergic to mirrors. That line became my armor. My compass. I printed it, folded it neatly, and slid it into the pocket of the same blazer I wore on my first day, not as a callback. As a countdown. IT started small. An error in payroll. 2 engineers didn't get their bonuses on time. People joked about it in Slack. Maybe the CFO finally hit Ctrl+Alt+Del on our happiness. But by noon, HR sent an email marked high priority. Then finance sent another, then silence. They always say systems are robust, until you watch one hiccup on a live dashboard. I watched mine at exactly 9:03 a.m. that Wednesday. The button I had written weeks ago wasn't flashy. It didn't scream sabotage. It wasn't even labeled anything suspicious. Just reallocate pending. It didn't delete data. It didn't steal a dime. It simply executed every single payroll task exactly as instructed, including the ones buried in the draft folder marked "Do not process until approved." All at once, bonuses scheduled for Q4? Gone. Executive auto raises based on phantom KPIs? Gone. Deferred founder equity refreshers? Triggered prematurely and logged. 401k matching? Capped at the legal minimum. The system did exactly what it was built to do. Just not what they assumed it would. The CFO blamed an intern. The intern blamed the new automation protocol. No one blamed me, because no one ever questioned the one person they never bothered to notice, but legal noticed. They had to. Because buried in the chaos was something else, a single line added to the audit trail, right where the bonus files should have been. Review flagged. Discretionary bonus adjustments, see archived approvals. They opened the archive. They saw the signatures. They saw who got bonuses, and who never did, despite promises. Suddenly, the smiling CEO wasn't in the office, the woman who had replaced me in data ops. She left early that day. Never came back. By Thursday, a mandatory all-hands was called. The CTO's voice cracked as he said, "We are entering a phase of strategic recalibration. Please bear with us during this cultural audit." They didn't say collapse. But it felt like it. I never claimed revenge. Revenge is loud. This was math. I gave the system the truth it refused to calculate. Let it loop itself into its own karma. The woman who once called me too sensitive for fast-paced culture posted a job update on LinkedIn, taking time to realign with my values. The CFO turned off comments on his profile. At 5:17 p.m., I received a message on Signal from the CTO's chief of staff. No greeting. No context, just 4 words. They triggered the clause. The countdown had started, and for the first time in months, I smiled. In the tangle of fine print and policy loopholes, they had overlooked one clause, the one I wrote. It was buried in a systems integrity amendment, quietly inserted during my last audit before being reassigned. If discretionary compensation adjustments exceed 22% variance from historical department trends, the Ethics Review Panel must be auto-notified, and any suspended reviewer regains temporary access to the audit ledger for independent verification. I was that suspended reviewer. And now, I had keys to the vault. I logged in from a clean device. VPN routed through 3 legal jurisdictions. The panel members, former ethics officers, independent consultants, ex-SEC compliance lawyers, received auto-notifications within minutes, and with those notifications came the receipts, all the ghost bonuses. The shadow departments funneling quarterly funds into executive pools. The intern's name, used as a front on over 5 allocation files. The false attribution of performance metrics to culture-forward initiatives. They had used my own automation framework to launder favoritism. The ethics panel convened. Virtually, and in haste. I wasn't present. I didn't need to be. The log spoke louder than I ever could, but there was one final step I took. A poetic one, attached a short memo, anonymized, unsigned, titled simply, Cascades, a Study in Cause and Effect. Inside were 2 charts. 1. A timeline of payroll manipulations. 2. A chart mapping company morale, attrition, and post-bonus resignations, and one final line in the appendix. A system built on silence will always fear the sound of its own truth. By Monday, the board had removed the CFO. By Wednesday, the CEO stepped down to pursue philanthropic goals. By Friday, the compliance insurance flagged the entire year for external investigation. The company restructured. Quietly. Desperately, and I accepted an invitation to rejoin, not as an employee, but as an independent audit ethics consultant. 6 figures. 0 meetings. Full access. I walked back into that glass building 7 months after being replaced, same badge photo. New title. No manager. The woman who once took my desk passed me in the hallway. She looked away first. I didn't gloat. Didn't post. Didn't even speak. Some women wear revenge like red lipstick. I wore it like silence, tailored, clean, and undeniable. She didn't burn the place down. She rewired its foundation so the collapse would echo with her name.